Nobody tells you that debt doesn't destroy you in the big moments. It destroys you when you finally let your guard down. That's the sick part, dude. Like, you spend weeks grinding, stressing, barely sleeping, checking your account every morning like it's gonna bite you. And then, for 1 second, just one freaking second, you think you got it under control. You breathe. You relax. And that's exactly when it tightens around your throat again. It's like something's been watching you this whole time, waiting for that exact moment of weakness to crush you completely. The interest doesn't attack when you're paying attention, bro. It attacks when you're exhausted, when you finally think things are gonna get better. That's when it strikes. And you feel it, this deep, burning injustice, this silent humiliation that nobody prepared you for. You trusted the system, man. You played by the rules. And now you're fighting alone against something you can't even see. Something that knows you better than you know yourself. Something that's been calculating every second of your vulnerability, just waiting to drop the hammer when you're too tired to fight back anymore. If while I'm talking right now, you're remembering that exact moment when you thought you were finally gonna catch a breath, and the debt squeezed even harder, then you need to follow this channel. Because I'm exposing the hidden traps that were literally designed to catch you off guard. This isn't about budgeting tips or some feel-good financial advice, dude. This is about the mechanisms they don't want you to see, the patterns built into the system to make sure you never escape. Every time you think you're climbing out, there's something pulling you back down. And it's not random. It's engineered. I break down exactly how these traps work, how they time themselves to your behavior, how they wait for your weakest moments. If you've ever felt like the debt knows when you're vulnerable, like it's watching you and calculating your every move, you're not paranoid, bro. You're just starting to see what's really going on. Hit subscribe because what I'm about to show you goes way deeper than what you've been told. This is the stuff they bury in fine print, the mechanisms hidden behind normal financial products. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what they never explain to you, man. The debt doesn't fail. It doesn't make mistakes. It observes patterns. Your patterns. Every single move you make, every payment you miss, every time you scrape together just enough to cover the minimum, it's all being tracked. Not by some evil person in a dark room, but by the system itself. The algorithm. The structure. And that structure was built with one purpose: to tighten exactly when you loosen up. Think about it. You ever notice how the biggest financial hits don't come when you're already drowning? They come when you finally think you're gonna make it. You get a little breathing room, maybe you paid down some of the balance, maybe you got a small raise at work, maybe you just had one decent month where nothing catastrophic happened. And right then, right when you're starting to believe things might actually turn around, boom, the interest rate jumps. The minimum payment increases. Some fee you never heard of suddenly appears on your statement. A medical bill hits. Your car breaks down. Something always happens, dude. Always. And you start thinking it's just bad luck, just terrible timing. But it's not. The increase in interest isn't random, bro. It's synchronized with your behavior. These financial products, these credit systems, they're designed to watch for specific triggers. When you start making consistent payments, when your credit score inches up just a little, when you show any sign of stability, that's when they adjust the terms. That's when the promotional rate expires. That's when the variable APR kicks in. That's when they hit you with the balance transfer fee you forgot about. It's all calculated, man. Every little moment of relief you feel is engineered to make you think you're in control, when really you're just being guided deeper into the trap. You're not steering this thing. You never were. They give you just enough slack in the rope to think you're walking forward on your own, but the whole time they're measuring exactly how far you'll go before they yank it tight again. And here's the really messed up part. The system doesn't just react to what you do. It predicts what you're gonna do. Think about all the data they have on you. Your payment history going back years. Your spending patterns. What time of month you're most likely to miss a payment. What kind of emergencies you've faced before. How you respond to stress. They know that when people start feeling relief, they make certain decisions. They spend a little more. They save a little less. They stop checking their accounts as obsessively. They let their guard down. And that's exactly what the system is waiting for, dude. That moment of psychological vulnerability. Because debt isn't just a financial tool, it's a psychological weapon. It operates on your emotions, your stress levels, your hope. When you're constantly on edge, constantly stressed, you make reactive decisions. You take whatever option gives you immediate relief, even if it costs you more in the long run. You consolidate at a higher rate because you can't stand managing 5 different payments. You take the payday loan because you're desperate. You max out another card to cover the minimum on the first one. Every move you make when you're stressed is a move that benefits the system, not you. But here's where it gets even more sinister, man. The system also knows that constant stress breaks people down too much. If you're completely crushed, if you're totally hopeless, you might just give up entirely. You might stop paying altogether. You might declare bankruptcy. You might disappear. And they don't want that. They want you alive, functioning, paying. So they give you those moments of relief on purpose. They let you breathe just enough to keep you in the game. It's like a predator playing with its food, bro. It doesn't kill you right away. It lets you run a little, lets you think you might escape, and then it pounces again. And again. And again. Until you're so exhausted that you don't even try to run anymore. You just accept it. You internalize the debt as part of your identity. You start saying things like, I'll always be in debt, or I'll never own anything, or this is just how life is. And once you've accepted it, once you've internalized it, they've won. Because now you're not even trying to escape. You're just managing. Just surviving. Just making the minimum payment every month for the rest of your life while the balance barely moves and the interest keeps piling up. They've turned you into a permanent revenue stream, man. Not a customer. Not a borrower who'll eventually pay off and walk away. A perpetual debtor. A subscription service for the financial industry. And the calmness you feel, those brief moments when you think things are getting better, that's not real relief, dude. That's the system recalibrating. It's letting the pressure off just enough so it can build it back up again even stronger. Because pressure that's constant becomes background noise. You adapt to it. You stop feeling it as intensely. But pressure that releases and then slams back down, that keeps you reactive. That keeps you desperate. That keeps you making decisions out of fear instead of strategy. And fear is exactly where they want you, bro. Fear makes you pay whatever they ask. Fear makes you accept whatever terms they offer. Fear makes you grateful for scraps. You ever notice how the worst financial blows come disguised as solutions? You're drowning in credit card debt, so they offer you a consolidation loan? But the interest rate is barely lower and now you've just freed up your credit cards to max out again. You're behind on your mortgage, so they offer you a modification, but it extends your loan by 10 years and costs you tens of thousands more in the long run. You can't afford your medical bills, so they offer you a payment plan, but it's reporting to collections the whole time, destroying your credit while you think you're handling it responsibly. Every solution they offer comes with a trap hidden inside it, man. And the trap is always designed to activate later, when you've relaxed, when you think you've handled the problem. That's the real genius of it. They don't hit you immediately. They let you think you made a smart move. They let you feel relief. And then, 6 months later, 12 months later, when you've completely forgotten about the fine print, when you've moved on mentally, that's when the trap springs. That's when you discover the balloon payment you didn't know about. That's when the introductory rate expires and your payment doubles. That's when you realize the debt you thought you consolidated is still there, just moved around, and now you've got even more on top of it. The system is playing a long game, dude. You're thinking month to month, payment to payment. They're thinking in decades. They're thinking in life cycles. They know exactly how to keep you trapped for 20, 30, 40 years. And the sickest part? You'll thank them for it. You'll feel grateful when they approve your refinance. You'll feel relieved when they increase your credit limit. You'll feel like they're helping you, like they're on your side. But they're not, man. They never were. They're the house, and the house always wins. Not because you're stupid. Not because you're irresponsible. But because the game is rigged from the start, and the moment you relax is the moment they tighten the noose. This is happening to you too, isn't it? That feeling that every time you finally get your stuff organized, something shifts and drags you right back into the hole. Like, you spend months clawing your way up, making sacrifices, cutting back on everything, doing all the right things they tell you to do, and then out of nowhere, something changes and you're back at square one. Or worse, you're even deeper than before. Comment if this has hit you when you least expected it, bro. Because I need you to know you're not alone in this. I need you to see that this isn't just your story. This is happening to millions of people right now, all of them thinking they're the only ones, all of them blaming themselves, all of them convinced they just need to work harder or be smarter or make better choices. But it's not about choices, man. It's about the system. And the system is designed to make you feel like you're the problem. That's part of how it works. It isolates you. It makes you ashamed. It makes you think that if you were just better with money, if you were just more disciplined, if you just planned ahead more, you wouldn't be in this mess. But that's a lie, dude. The biggest lie they ever sold us. Because the truth is, the system doesn't care how disciplined you are. It doesn't care how hard you work. It doesn't care how much you sacrifice. It's gonna get you anyway. Maybe not today. Maybe not this month. But eventually, when you finally let yourself believe things are getting better, when you finally exhale, that's when it strikes. And I know exactly what that moment feels like, bro. You wake up one morning and for the first time in forever, you don't immediately feel that crushing weight on your chest. You check your account and the numbers don't make you want to throw your phone across the room. You start thinking about actual plans for the future instead of just surviving until next week. You let yourself imagine what it would be like to not be constantly stressed about money. You start feeling like a human being again instead of just a machine that converts labor into minimum payments. And that feeling, man, that tiny glimpse of normalcy, that brief moment of peace, it's addictive. You want more of it. You need more of it. So you start making small decisions based on that feeling. Maybe you go out to eat for the first time in months. Maybe you buy something you actually want instead of just what you absolutely need. Maybe you book a cheap weekend trip because you feel like you've earned it. Maybe you just stop checking your accounts 3 times a day because the constant vigilance is exhausting and things seem stable enough now. And those decisions aren't irresponsible, dude. They're human. They're normal. They're what people are supposed to do when they're not living in constant survival mode. But the system doesn't care about what's human or normal. It only cares about patterns. And the pattern it's looking for is exactly this. The moment you stop being hypervigilant. The moment you start acting like someone who isn't drowning. Because here's what nobody tells you about financial stress, man. It's not sustainable. The human body and mind weren't designed to operate in crisis mode 24/7 for years on end. That level of stress physically damages you. It destroys your health. It ruins your relationships. It makes you ineffective at work, which ironically makes your financial situation even worse. So at some point your brain forces you to relax. It's not even a choice. It's a survival mechanism. Your nervous system literally can't maintain that level of activation indefinitely, so it crashes. It gives you those moments of calm whether you want them or not. And that's exactly when the system has you, bro. Because you're not choosing to let your guard down strategically. You're collapsing from exhaustion. And when you're collapsed, when your defenses are down, when you're too tired to read the fine print or question the terms or think 3 steps ahead, that's when they change the rules on you. That's when the interest adjusts. That's when the fees appear. That's when the collections calls start even though you've been making payments. That's when you discover some clause you never knew existed that suddenly applies to your situation. And you feel blindsided, man. You feel ambushed. Because you were finally starting to believe you had a handle on things. Comment below if you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've lived through that cycle so many times you can predict it now. If you've gotten to the point where you don't even trust good news anymore because you know something bad is coming right behind it. If you've started flinching every time you open your mailbox or check your email because you're just waiting for the next financial blow. If relief has become more terrifying than stress because at least with stress you know what you're dealing with. That's what they've done to us, dude. They've trained us to fear our own moments of peace. They've turned hope into a warning sign. They've made us paranoid and hypervigilant and unable to ever fully relax because deep down we know the system is watching, waiting, calculating when to strike next. And the worst part is you can't opt out, man. You can't just decide not to play. Because the system isn't something external you can walk away from. It's the water we're all swimming in. It's how rent works, how medical care works, how transportation works, how employment works, how everything works. You need credit to function in modern society. You need loans to access basic necessities that wages don't cover. You need to participate in the system even when you know the system is designed to trap you. So you're stuck in this nightmare position where you have to engage with something that's actively hurting you, and you have to do it with a smile, with gratitude even, because at least they approved you, at least you have access, at least you're not completely shut out yet. And they count on that desperation, bro. They count on you feeling like you have no other options. They count on you being too exhausted to fight back, too isolated to organize with other people in the same situation, too ashamed to even talk about it openly. Because if we all started comparing notes, if we all started seeing the patterns together instead of experiencing them alone, if we all realized that this isn't individual failure but systemic design, everything would change. The whole game depends on keeping us separated, keeping us quiet, keeping us convinced that our debt is our personal problem to solve individually. But it's not, man. It never was. This is a collective trap. And the only way out is collective understanding. So drop a comment. Share your story. Let other people know they're not alone in this. Let them know that the feeling of being watched by your debt, of being hunted by interest rates, of being crushed exactly when you thought you were safe, that's not paranoia. That's pattern recognition. That's your brain finally seeing what's actually happening. And once you see it, once you really understand how deliberate this whole system is, how carefully designed every trap is, how precisely timed every attack is, you can't go back to thinking it's just bad luck or poor planning. You start seeing it for what it really is. And that's when things get really dark, dude. Because the truth is so much worse than you think. The truth is that debt doesn't tighten when you relax by accident, bro. There's an invisible mechanism behind it. The interest was structured to detect exactly when you're vulnerable. It's in the calm, not the chaos, that the system captures you for good. And I know how insane that sounds, man. I know it sounds like conspiracy theory stuff. But just hear me out, because once you see how this actually works, you can't unsee it. The financial industry has decades of data on human behavior. They know exactly how people respond to stress. They know exactly how people respond to relief. They know the psychological patterns that play out when someone is drowning in debt versus when someone thinks they're finally getting ahead. And they've built products, terms, and conditions specifically engineered around those patterns. This isn't speculation, dude. This is documented. Variable interest rates aren't just tied to market conditions, they're tied to your credit utilization, your payment history, your perceived risk level. And all of those factors change based on your behavior. When you start paying on time consistently, when you start reducing your balance, when you show signs of financial stability, that's when you become a different kind of risk to them. Not the risk that you won't pay, the risk that you'll pay off and leave. And they can't have that, man. See, the most profitable customer for a credit card company isn't someone who pays off their balance every month. It's not even someone who's completely maxed out and defaulting. It's someone who carries a balance indefinitely. Someone who makes regular payments but never quite escapes. Someone who stays trapped in that sweet spot where they're paying massive amounts in interest but never missing enough payments to default. That's the golden customer, bro. That's who they want you to be. And when you start showing signs that you might actually pay off and escape, the system has built-in mechanisms to pull you back. It's not some guy in an office making a personal decision about you specifically. It's algorithms. It's automated triggers. It's terms buried in contracts that activate under specific conditions. When your credit score improves, your promotional APR expires. When you pay down below a certain threshold, they introduce a new fee structure. When you consolidate debt to escape high interest, they approve you for more credit somewhere else, practically begging you to borrow more. And you do, man. Not because you're stupid, but because the relief of having available credit is so powerful after being maxed out for so long. Having that cushion, that emergency buffer, that sense of possibility, it changes how you feel every single day. So you keep the cards open. You might even use them a little just for small stuff, just to keep them active. And slowly, gradually, without even realizing it's happening, you're building the balance back up. Not all at once. Not in a way that feels alarming. Just incrementally. $20 here. $50 there. One emergency. One unexpected expense. One moment of weakness when you just needed something to feel normal again. And before you know it, dude, you're back where you started. Except now you're older. Now you've wasted years of your life making payments that barely touch the principal. Now you've paid thousands in interest for the privilege of staying trapped. And the system knew this would happen, man. It counted on it. Because the mechanism isn't designed to help you build wealth or achieve financial freedom. It's designed to extract maximum value from you over the longest possible time. That's why minimum payments are calculated the way they are. Just enough to keep you paying, not enough to ever escape. That's why interest compounds daily on most credit products. That's why penalties and fees are structured to be devastating when triggered but easy to trigger accidentally. Every single element of modern consumer debt is optimized not for your benefit, but for their profit. And the optimization is ruthless, bro. They've studied exactly how to keep you engaged, compliant, and paying without pushing you over the edge into total collapse. It's behavioral engineering at a massive scale. And the most insidious part is that it uses your own hope against you. Your moments of optimism become vulnerabilities. Your desire to believe things are getting better becomes the opening they exploit. Because when you're in crisis mode, you're careful. You're checking everything. You're reading statements. You're tracking every dollar. But when you start to relax, when you start to believe you've got things under control, that's when you stop checking so carefully. That's when you miss the notice about the rate change. That's when you don't realize the terms adjusted. That's when you overlook the new fee. That's when you forget about the balloon payment coming due next year. And it's not because you're careless, man. It's because you're human. It's because the constant vigilance required to navigate modern financial products is genuinely exhausting and unsustainable. It's because you shouldn't have to be a forensic accountant just to avoid being exploited by your own credit card. But that's the reality we live in, bro. The system is so complex, so layered with fine print and conditional clauses and special circumstances, that it's literally designed to be impossible to fully understand without professional help. And even professionals miss stuff sometimes. I've talked to bankruptcy attorneys who'll tell you straight up that consumer credit agreements are deliberately written to be confusing. That's not an accident. That's strategy. Because confusion benefits the house. When you don't fully understand the terms, you can't make informed decisions. When you can't make informed decisions, you're more likely to make choices that benefit them at your expense. And when things go wrong, when you end up paying way more than you thought you would, when the debt grows instead of shrinking despite your payments, you blame yourself. You think you misunderstood. You think you should have read more carefully. You think you messed up. But you didn't, man. The game was rigged from the start. The moment you needed to borrow money, the moment you entered into that agreement, you were already playing a game designed for you to lose. Not immediately. Not obviously. But slowly, gradually, systematically over years or decades. And here's what makes it even more disturbing, dude. The system doesn't just react to your individual behavior. It's networked. The credit bureaus, the banks, the lenders, the retailers offering store cards, they're all sharing data. They all have access to your payment patterns, your utilization rates, your history. So when you successfully pay off one card, another institution sees that and immediately targets you with a pre-approved offer. When you consolidate debt, new offers flood your mailbox because they know you now have available credit again. When you declare bankruptcy and finally get discharged, you start getting credit offers within months because they know you can't declare bankruptcy again for years, which makes you less risky in a twisted way. The whole ecosystem is designed to keep you in debt, bro. Not any one specific debt that you can pay off and be done with, but debt as a permanent condition, a permanent relationship, a permanent extraction of your labor. Because that's what it really is, man. Debt is a mechanism to claim future labor. When you borrow money, you're not just getting currency, you're selling hours of your life that you haven't lived yet. You're promising to work in the future to pay for something in the present. And the interest is the premium they charge for that arrangement. But here's the thing, dude. The amount of future labor you're actually selling is hidden from you. The true cost is obscured by minimum payments, by monthly statements that don't show you the total you'll pay over the life of the loan, by promotional periods that mask the real rate. If you saw up front exactly how many hours of your life you were selling, exactly how much of your future you were trading away, you might not take the deal. So they don't show you that. They show you the monthly payment. They show you whether you're approved. They make it feel accessible and manageable and reasonable. And by the time you realize the true cost, man, you're already trapped. You're already years into the payments with no clear way out. And that realization, that moment when you finally understand how much you've been captured, how thoroughly you've been had, that's the most crushing moment of all. Because it's not just about the money anymore, bro. It's about the time. It's about the life you've lost. It's about the years you spent stressed, exhausted, working just to pay interest, just to stay afloat, just to avoid drowning. It's about the experiences you missed because you couldn't afford them. It's about the relationships that suffered because financial stress poisoned everything. It's about the health problems you developed from chronic stress. It's about the dreams you abandoned because debt made them impossible. That's what they're really taking from you, man. Not just your money, your life, your potential, your peace, your future. And they're doing it with your consent because you signed the agreement, you accepted the terms, you borrowed the money. So technically it's all legal. It's all above board. It's all just business. But morally, ethically, it's predatory as hell, dude. It's exploitation dressed up in financial terminology. And the system protects itself by making you feel like you chose this, like you're responsible for this, like you could escape if you just tried harder. But the truth is, the system was designed to be inescapable. That's not a bug. That's the core feature. And the moment you relax, the moment you think you're finally getting out, that's when it proves it. And the most disturbing part is that this trap, this mechanism that tightens exactly when you relax, it's not the last one, bro. There's a second mechanism that's even more aggressive, and it kicks in specifically when you try to react. When you finally see what's happening and you attempt to fight back, when you try to consolidate or negotiate or restructure, that's when the real game begins, man. Because everything I just told you, everything about how debt tightens when you breathe, how the system watches for your vulnerability, how it's all calculated and engineered, that's just the surface level. That's the trap they expect you to see eventually. Some people figure it out after a few years. Some people never figure it out at all. But the ones who do figure it out, the ones who start making moves to escape, who start trying to outsmart the system, there's a whole other layer waiting for them, dude. A deeper mechanism that activates specifically when you show signs of resistance. Think about what happens when someone realizes they're trapped in high-interest debt. What's the first thing every financial advisor tells them? Consolidate. Get a personal loan at a lower rate and pay off the credit cards. Sounds smart, right? Sounds like the obvious solution. But here's what they don't tell you, man. The moment you consolidate, you've just freed up all that credit card capacity again. And you're in a weird psychological space because you feel like you just made a smart move, like you just took control of your situation. You feel empowered, relieved. Like you finally outmaneuvered the system. And that feeling of victory, bro, that's exactly what makes you vulnerable to the next trap. Because now you've got this clean slate. All these credit cards with zero balances. And you tell yourself you're not going to use them. You tell yourself you learned your lesson. You're going to pay off this consolidation loan and never get into debt again. But life doesn't stop, man. Emergencies don't stop. The car still breaks down. Medical issues still happen. Work still cuts your hours or fires you unexpectedly. Your landlord still raises the rent. All the financial pressure that pushed you into debt in the first place. None of that went away just because you consolidated. So eventually, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, you use one of those cards again. Just once. Just for an emergency. Just until next paycheck. And it's fine at first because it's a small balance and you can handle it. But then another emergency hits. And another. And slowly you're building the balances back up on the cards while you're still making payments on the consolidation loan. And now you've got more total debt than you started with, bro. You didn't escape. You just added another layer. You made the trap bigger. And the system knew you would do this, man. The data shows that most people who consolidate debt end up with more total debt within 2 years. Most people. That's not a coincidence. That's not individual failure across millions of people. That's the system working exactly as designed. Because consolidation isn't actually designed to help you escape, dude. It's designed to expand your capacity to borrow. It's designed to reset the game board so you can go deeper into debt than you were before. And the credit card companies aren't worried when you pay them off through consolidation because they know statistically you'll be back. They've got the data. They know the patterns. They know that human beings can't maintain perfect financial discipline indefinitely, especially when the economic system itself is designed to keep wages low and costs high, especially when one medical emergency or car accident or family crisis can obliterate months of careful planning. So they wait, man. They send you pre-approved offers. They increase your limits. They make credit available because they know you'll eventually need it again. And when you do come back, when you start using those cards again, the rates are higher now. The terms are worse. Because your debt-to-income ratio changed when you took out that consolidation loan. Your credit utilization will start climbing again. Your perceived risk increases. And all of that justifies them charging you more, trapping you deeper, extracting even more value from your future labor. It's a cycle that expands with each iteration, bro. Every time you try to escape and fail, the next trap is bigger. The next layer of debt is heavier. The next mechanism is more aggressive. And here's where it gets really dark, man. There's a point in this cycle where the system stops trying to keep you paying. There's a threshold where you become more valuable in default than in payment. Because once you default, once you stop paying entirely, that debt gets sold. It gets packaged and sold to collections agencies for pennies on the dollar. And those agencies have a completely different playbook, dude. They're not trying to keep you as a long-term customer. They're trying to extract whatever they can as fast as they can, through whatever means necessary. Harassment, threats, legal action, wage garnishment, asset seizure. They'll destroy your credit completely. They'll make it impossible for you to rent an apartment, get a job, open a bank account, access any kind of financial services. They'll turn you into a financial ghost, bro, someone who exists outside the normal economic system because you've been marked as uncollectible. And you might think that's the end, that once you're destroyed financially there's nowhere lower to fall. But that's when the third mechanism activates, man. The one almost nobody sees coming. The one that operates on people who've been completely financially destroyed and are trying to rebuild from nothing. Because even when you're broke, even when your credit is ruined, even when you have nothing, you still need to survive, bro. You still need housing, transportation, food, medical care, basic necessities. And when you can't access traditional financial products anymore, when banks won't touch you and credit cards won't approve you, you get pushed into the predatory underground economy. Payday loans at 400% APR. Title loans that steal your car. Rent-to-own schemes that charge triple the retail price. Check cashing services that take a percentage of every dollar you earn. Employer-based early pay programs that look like benefits but function like high-interest loans. This whole shadow financial system that exists specifically to exploit people who've been locked out of the mainstream system, man. And the profits in this space are even more insane than traditional debt because the people trapped here have no alternatives. They can't shop around. They can't negotiate. They can't escape to a better option because this is the only option. So they pay whatever is demanded because the alternative is homelessness, starvation, death. And the system, the big mainstream financial system that crushed them in the first place, it profits from this too, dude. Because many of those predatory lenders are owned by or partnered with traditional banks. The money flows back up. The extraction continues even after you've been pushed out of the visible economy. So when I say there's a second mechanism that's more aggressive, man, I'm talking about this entire sequence that activates when you try to fight back. Consolidation that leads to expanded debt. Default that leads to collections. Financial destruction that leads to predatory lending. Each stage is more violent than the last. Each trap is harder to escape. And the system is designed to move you through these stages systematically, extracting value at every level, ensuring that even your attempts to resist just feed you deeper into the machine. And almost nobody talks about this, bro. Almost nobody maps out the full sequence because people experiencing it are too ashamed to speak up and people who escape don't want to relive it. So everyone goes through it alone, thinking they're the only ones, thinking they just made bad choices, never realizing that millions of people are going through the exact same progression because it's not individual failure, it's systemic design. And the most messed up part? This still isn't the deepest level, man. There's something even worse that happens at the end of this cycle. Something that almost nobody survives with their dignity intact. Something that changes not just your financial situation but your entire relationship with reality, with hope, with the possibility of a future. But that's the part nobody shows you, dude. That's the part they bury. That's the mechanism so dark that even talking about it feels dangerous. Because once you understand how deep this really goes, once you see the full architecture of the trap, once you realize how completely and deliberately people are broken down by this system, you can't look at the world the same way anymore, bro. You can't pretend it's just about personal responsibility or bad choices or lack of financial literacy. You see it for what it is. A machine designed to consume human lives and convert them into profit. A machine that's been refined over generations to be as efficient as possible at extraction. A machine that doesn't stop at your money, it takes your time, your health, your relationships, your sanity, your hope. And it does it all legally. All with your signed consent. All while convincing you that you chose this. That's where the real horror lives, man. Not in the debt itself, but in the realization of what the debt actually is. What it represents. What it does to people not just financially but psychologically, spiritually, existentially. And that realization, that's the point of no return. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand the full depth of what's happening, you can't go back to thinking everything's basically okay and you just need to budget better. The veil comes off. And what's underneath is so much worse than you ever imagined. And that's where the real game begins, dude. That's when you realize that everything up until now was just the tutorial. The actual nightmare, the thing that nobody prepares you for, the thing that breaks people permanently, that's still waiting. And it activates exactly when you think you've finally seen the whole picture.